powerful and highly discredited so-called journalist who's made a profession of peddling hoaxes time and time again. Nobody was texting war plans, and that's all I have to say about that.
And that's Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth yesterday rejecting The Atlantic's reporting that highly sensitive war plans were accidentally sent to a journalist in a Signal group chat with high members of the Trump administration, including information about military strikes in Yemen. President Trump is standing by his national security team as the NSC confirms the message thread appears to be authentic. They're now investigating how the journalist at Atlantic's number was added to the chain. We have not had any comments from anyone publicly, but Peter Doocy apparently spoke with National Security Advisor Michael Waltz and says that there will be no resignations. Michael Waltz is not resigning over this. Fox's Peter Doocy reports Waltz is sticking to his schedule and his plans to speak to the president later today, and the entire national security team is sticking to their planned schedule. Joining me now is North Carolina Congressman Pat Harrigan, also a member of the House Armed Services Committee. Congressman, what's your reaction to all of this?
Good morning, Maria. Look, I think we need to take everything about this very seriously because it has to do with operational security. It potentially has to do with American lives if it was in a different situation. And so I think we've got to give all the due diligence, the seriousness that we ought to. Our troops deserve that.
Of course. And we're trying to understand how this happened. You know, I mean, look, obviously they were all in a group chat. They're all talking about, from what we know from the chat, they're all talking about the strikes in Yemen. Then they congratulate one another. Great job, great job. And then the person who's on this chat from the Atlantic says, well, I was just given all these plans. So how does that happen?
Yeah, oftentimes, look, when you have a security breach, it can play out like this, where you actually have two different members kind of contributing to the overall problem, each individually not intending for it to play out like that, obviously. But I think the important thing, Maria, here is outcomes. And the outcome of this is that we had a successful operation in Yemen. The mission was not compromised from an execution perspective. And ultimately, President Trump was able to send a very strong message to our adversaries, to Iran, to the Houthi leadership, saying things are going to be very different under the Trump administration than they were underneath the Biden administration.
Well, I think that's a very important point that you just said. I mean, mistakes happen. Mistakes happen all the time. And at the end of the day, let's talk about ramifications. What were the ramifications? Did the enemy find out any secrets about the United States?
That's exactly right. And I'll tell you, I think that
so
if we had had
no, correct?
a
So I was just asking you a question. The answer was no, right? The enemy did not find out any secrets from the United States?
That's correct. The mission was not compromised from that perspective.
Right. American and Ukrainian officials, meanwhile, are meeting today in Saudi Arabia following yesterday's ceasefire talks between the U.S. and Russia. These two countries supposed to release a joint statement sometime today, but a Kremlin spokesman says those details will not be published. Ukrainian President Zelensky recently called for more pressure on Russia, Congressman. How does this play out? And do you have any sense of what's going on in Saudi?
Look, I think that we're making progress towards a peace in Ukraine. I think President Trump has been very clear about what his intentions are, and we're trying to lower the temperature of conflict around the globe. That is in America's best strategic interest. There's no question about that. And I think that his team that's over there working in a bilateral basis to try to bring an end to this conflict is doing a good job in moving the ball forward on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I mean, President Trump has been trying to end two wars simultaneously, but then there's China back here, right? And the arms race with China is heating up. The People's Liberation Army is now using AI tool DeepSeek for non-combat support. DeepSeek's open-source large language models reportedly being used by military hospitals, police units, and national defense mobilization units. Meanwhile, Boeing just won that $20 billion contract to build the Air Force's next generation of fighter jets, the F-47. President Trump says it will be the most lethal jet yet. Congressman, you're a decorated combat veteran. I'd like to understand your take on the capabilities of our military right now. For so long, we've been talking about this adversary in communist China winning the race And we know they have more ships than the United States does, a bigger Navy than the United States does. Not a better Navy, but a bigger Navy. And we've been zeroing in on defense technology recently on this program. We're going to talk with Kyle Bass in a few minutes. He's investing in it. But how would you characterize the capabilities of our military today?
Look, I think Secretary Hegseth and President Trump have been really clear. We are aligning our capabilities to our adversaries' threats. I think that we probably stumbled a little bit during the Biden administration. We lost some ground, but we are quickly making up that ground and making sure that our expensive, exquisite technologies like the F-47 are going to give us strategic overmatch against our adversaries like China. It also is imperative that we increase our low-cost, high-volume baselines of war. That's your weapons, your munitions, explosives, drone production, all these things that are actually very cost-effective, very cheap, and can provide a very significant impact on our enemies abroad. You mentioned China, Maria. This is one of the reasons that we need to end the conflict in Ukraine. Our greatest strategic interest, the United States of America's interest, is bifurcating the relationship between Russia and China. We can best do that economically with Russia, so we can militarily focus on deterring China long term.
That's what we want to do. You're also introducing the Bipartisan Lowering Eggs Act, which overturns an FDA rule forcing farmers to destroy 400 million eggs each year. Why?
Well, look, a very wealthy man once told me a long time ago when I was starting my business that pennies make dollars and dollars make millions. And we're only talking about 400 million eggs a year here, but it's still 400 million eggs a year, and it impacts both consumers and farmers. This is actually a win-win where we get to tone down some Obama-era regulations that ultimately will lower prices for consumers and lower waste for farmers. This is a win across the board, even if it's a small one, Maria.
Well, yeah, well, we'll take the small wins when we can. Congressman, great to see you this morning. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you, Maria.
All right, Congressman Pat Harrigan there. Stay with us. We'll be right back.